Are all Cleveland Browns on the do not draft list? Should you be drafting Titans pass catchers as if Cam Ward is going to be their quarterback? And is McCole Hardman the answer we deserve with the Packers wide receiving core? Plus, we're talking T. Higgins, Cooper Kupp, Sam Darnold, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Ferrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than me, the lesser.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man, nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of the Bulkaholics tuning in tonight for the special Wednesday edition of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ferrell Elliott, who will be joining me here shortly. Before he pops on by, I want to remind everybody that we got a lot of stuff going on over at the FFPC right now, including but not limited to the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball and Superflex Best Ball tournaments. Now, the Best Ball tournament, the Never Too Early tournament, is $125 to enter. You can win $40,000 for a grand prize there. The Superflex, same idea, just a $35 entry fee, but you can still win $10,000 there as well. The tournaments are going to be running through the NFL draft, and they're going to conclude on April 24th, which is the first day of the NFL draft. Draft's available right now at the FFPC 30-second, 60-second, 2-hour, and 6-hour clocks. Check it out at myffpc.com. And while you're there, we have several hundred Dynasty Orphan Teams available. Now, that list has gotten pretty low compared to where it was at because people have been scooping them up. We got a lot of great deals. Normally, those entry fees are going from $77 to $5,000. Some of them have been discounted to as little as $1. So you can basically pick up a Dynasty team for free that first year. And manage it to glory, maybe right away in that first year too. I've seen it done. The FFPC has had Dynasty Leagues for about a decade and a half, and in that decade and a half, we've had 1,800 plus Dynasty Leagues. Not a single one has ever folded. So once you are playing Dynasty with the FFPC, you don't have to worry about building up a juggernaut and then not being able to enjoy the spoils of that. myffpc.com is where to go for that, as well as the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament, a $1 million grand prize, $350 entry fee. You get a $50 discount off every third team you get. Drafts running now. They have been running now for about a month and a half, roughly, both slow and live. The Early Rampage and 7 Bananas promos are live. The Early Rampage is basically a separate tournament of the first 200 leagues that will make up the Big Gorilla. So you enter right now, you're basically getting 2 tournaments for the price of 1. Check that out and enter the FFPC Big Gorilla. The 7 Bananas, we just awarded another $325 team today for people who are getting that 7 pick 2 times in a row. 3 times in a row, we'll get you a free main event entry. 4 times in a row, gets you a free $10,000 high society entry. And you get that 5 pick 7 times in a row. You'll get a free Jungle Safari for 4, courtesy of the Fantasy Football Players Championship. Who else is doing that? Nobody. myffpc.com is where to go. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share with your friends, share with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live. Bring in the co-host with the most. Ladies and gentlemen, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Mr. Ferrell Elliott. Ferrell, thank you so much for hanging out with me a couple of days early this week. Always appreciate your flexibility and appreciate your fantasy knowledge tonight because you and I are going to go hard on a lot of subjects. Good Wednesday evening for you.
Buddy, we're going hard. We're flexibility. You know, pretty soon we're going to be like, we're going to have to change our rating for the show with all those scriptures. But thank you, Balky. And yeah, I'm thrilled to be here with you, whatever the night. You know, this one kind of, whatever day of the week it is, this one kind of caught up to me a little bit. It's a busy day in the world of football. And Yeah, I'm excited about tonight's show. We're guest-free tonight.
Guest-free, yeah.
Even Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon couldn't pull that off. Letterman and Paul had all those musicians. They couldn't pull that off.
No, but we can, and we will tonight. With Friday being sort of a national holiday for the college basketball and sports fans, historically we don't get a lot of people watching on that night.
People like that. I don't know.
Yeah, they go crazy for it. I used to be a lot more into it. Not anymore. Now I'm like, this time of year, I'm all about Dynasty. I'm all about the KFFSC. Signed up for a couple.
People walking.
We are.
We're just that way.
I was over at KFFSC.com and signed up for a couple of best balls that are going on, slow best balls. Looking forward to those filling here shortly and getting my draft on here, continuing to get my draft on. KFFSC.com is where to go for that. Compete against me and a lot of the other luminaries we see on the show, including but not limited to Mr. Bill Hollywood, who's hanging out watching.
Oh, Bill's fantastic. Bill, jump into that site and get that schedule fixed up. It's only, you've only got like 150 more days, so you got to get that done. I was watching a basketball game the other night. There was a superlative effort. I don't remember the teams. We were in a night spot. Somebody asked me, what did I think of that player? And he just, he was in the mid-20s with points, rebounds, single-handedly took his team to victory. A good-looking player, about 6'6", a good 225 pounds. I said, that's a hell of a waste of a defensive end, but man, we're just football people.
We are football people. That's how we think about everything. Deebo Samuel probably could have been a pretty good small forward, but he chose football, and his former team has chose to trade him to the Washington Commanders. We found out from Adam Schefter, I believe this was today, that the Commanders have reworked Deebo Samuel's contract. He is guaranteed $17 million, and additional $3 million can be earned in incentives. Now, the Commanders only took on non-guaranteed money from Samuel's contract when they got it from the Niners. So they didn't have to give him anything, yet they decided to guarantee him $17 million. They weren't going to cut him, obviously, so you could say this was low risk. We don't know about void years, the venerable void years that are always added to contracts, certain contracts, which could spread out this cap hit as well. The Commanders had more than $20 million in cap space before this restructure. What does this mean for Deebo Samuel's usage? We briefly touched on him last week, Ferrell. He is going at wide receiver 38 at the 802. It's after Shakir. It's after Juwan Jennings. It's before Brandon Ayuk, his former teammate, and before Jaden Reed. This data I'm getting from fantasymojo.com. At Fantasy Mojo on X, Darren Armani runs both. He is the godfather of the Pros vs. Joe's challenge. And anytime we cite ADP, it's always due to his website. Subscribe to fantasymojo.com if you play in the FFPC. Wide receiver 38 on the surface, Ferrell, seems pretty palatable. This is a team that went out and got Samuel. They went out and paid Samuel to a certain degree. But still, I think about, and I can't remember who said it. I think it was on this show last week. Somebody said that Deebo Samuel has running back wear on him. And he is not a young man as far as wide receivers go anymore. So while I'm excited to see what Washington's doing here, and I'm excited how low he's going in FFPC Never Too Early tournaments right now, I still understand the age and the wear and tear on Deebo Samuel, which has me a little cautious. I think by and large, I'm shying away from Samuel. Is that the right play?
I don't think so. If you can get him 38, and if Mr. Armani, whose numbers are true, if you can get him 38 or later, you should be in a business with this player. We also talked about, and I remember that comment because we talked about the fact that both receivers, McLaurin and Samuel, are the same age. And that's when our guest stated, he's got running back wear on. Look, last year was just a very, very bad year. And for Deebo Samuel. And it was in a year where we all watched it. 49ers, everybody watches it. You can't hide a bad year when you play for the 49ers. So everybody saw it, and that's a recency bias. But this is a player and a team that believe in him. Now, Balky, nobody gave him any millions of dollars of contract because I remind you, sir, those numbers and those salaries are earned through negotiation. However, you're exactly right. Would the Commanders have been able to pay this money? Would they have chosen to pay this money without the significant increase in salary cap space that all the teams are enjoying this year, I don't know. So you can't give it a traditional, well, they went out and, you can follow the money. Well, this year they all had a big bonus. They all had extra money because of extra revenue coming into the league. Look, to answer your question, I think I'll just go back to my very first sentence. This is a premium ball player that you can get at a price that puts him in the neighborhood of some guys who've yet to do anything like he's done. And you can't believe that he's over with going to this team with this quarterback and the purpose of which they're playing in that division.
I think the other thing to keep in mind too, and maybe this is just me personally, I'm kind of excited to see what Cliff Kingsbury can do with a guy like Samuel, who is kind of a unicorn is not the right term because that gets tossed around way too much. But he is a out of the ordinary wide receiver. He's an out of the ordinary player. And Cliff Kingsbury, every time he's an OC, he seems to make a lot of exquisite.
I like to use that word.
It's on the tip of my tongue. It's on the tip of my tongue. What's the
So is this bourbon?
What's Ferrell? What's the salad you get at the steakhouses with the mozzarella, the tomato, and you get the vinaigrette on top? Caprese salad. He turns a lot of ketchup packets into caprese salad. That's what I'm looking for with Cliff Kingsbury. So
yeah, well,
so that's my take on that. For anybody who wants to eliminate Samuel from their draft board, you do so at your own peril. Now, speaking of eliminating players off your draft board, I'm struggling with this one. Maybe you can talk me off the ledge, and maybe it'll change. Mary Kay Cabot, who covers the Browns for Cleveland.com, has reported that the Browns and Carson Wentz, quote, definitely have mutual interest if the Browns don't sign Russell Wilson. Now, apparently, if they want Russell Wilson, they can have him as it stands right now. Obviously, Pittsburgh, New York. I think I read today that Russell Wilson really had a good meeting with the Giants. And Aaron Rodgers is still out there. We could talk about him at some point in the show tonight, too. I don't know what's going to happen there. But the fact that Wentz is being mentioned in this piece, I don't know if this is agent-driven. Maybe it is. But Week 18 was the only start that Wentz made last year for the AFC champion Kansas City Chiefs. 98 yards, and that was it. This is not giving me the warm fuzzies about drafting guys like Jerry Jeudy, drafting guys like David Njoku. I think about what the Browns could be if they have a capable quarterback there. Yeah, I feel pretty good about those guys. But right now, Ferrell, if it's Carson Wentz, and I'm not saying it's likely, but the fact that this is even out there, David Njoku is tight end 9, Jerry Jeudy as wide receiver 35. It's tough to get on board. Am I reading too much into this?
You're reading too much into this. And I think Mary Kay Cabot's got a crush on Carson Wentz. She's always, it appears that she's always throwing him out there. I mean, even Oinker's gone to sleep on this one, Balky. We've lost half our listening audience.
He's still here. Oinker's still here.
Geez. And that's the correct response to anything involved with Carson Wentz and fantasy football. But now you bring up an interesting point. You said Russell Wilson had a very good meeting with the New York Giants. Russell Wilson has got a lot of game. He's got a briefcase full of game. You remember when he came out of college?
Out of Wisconsin.
Yes. And, there was not a general manager that did not want to go to war with Russell Wilson because he can sell himself in the office better than any football player that I have ever heard of. So he's going to have a great meeting with whoever he comes in. And I think Russell Wilson might have, at this late career stage, and, he might have had a bit of an epiphany last year, and he might be a different individual who's grown a lot and is willing to take something on his shoulders and run with it. Both those teams are going to play better with Russell Wilson in the coming year than they did this previous year. And so from a fantasy standpoint, I'm not going to aggressively say Russell Wilson's here, I'm going to go draft that player. but I'm also going to look more deeply at wherever he lands to give those players a benefit of the doubt, perhaps. Is that fair?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the question. Is it fair to do that? Because if I find out, here's the thing. If Russell Wilson gets signed by the Browns, he's going to be the starter, and we'll see what the Browns do as far as, the draft goes. But Wilson will at least start the 2025 season as the starter. And then at that point, I'm fine with Jerry Jeudy. I'm fine with David Njoku. But Ferrell, I'm fine with them at current prices. I guess I don't know if Njoku's price goes up.
Well, I don't think
gets
so.
A quarterback. Okay. Jerry Jeudy's, I think, might, though. Given the tear that he was on last year, and he's being drafted behind 34 other receivers right now, I could see him sneaking into the top, 20, maybe top 25 is aggressive, but definitely moving up into between 25 and 30.
And you also said something in that soliloquy about the quarterbacks that represented the truest fact that I've ever heard uttered on this program is you don't know what's happening with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
And if you don't know Balky, that means no one knows. And
no one knows
to be known. It's not.
I'm going to tell you this right now. Aaron Rodgers doesn't even know. It was one of those things where, working in terrestrial radio here in Northeast Wisconsin, when Rodgers got traded to the Jets, we thought we were done talking about him. We're not, because he's still the center of every fantasy football, because there are so many dominoes that have to fall yet, and it depends upon. And then we got the first one, finding out that Minnesota's going to be good at this point, which I think was the Rossini or Fowler report. They're good with not having him on their roster at this point if he signs elsewhere or he retires, whatever. But it seems like they're going to be good to go with McCarthy, which obviously limits Rodgers. And these other jobs that are out there, Ferrell, they're not as enticing as that Vikings one was.
And if you want to feel what people know about Rodgers, get Leroy Carson on the phone, ask him what he thinks about it. And then we might have to appeal to get back on the air. But strong feelings in the Packer Nation, the Wisconsin area about Rodgers.
Speaking of, on my weekly or my daily radio show, I have a guy who works
terrestrial radio.
Terrestrial radio.
It's a great word,
terrestrial radio. I shout out Howard Stern. He's the one who came up with it. As far as I know. We have a guy on who lives in Northeast Wisconsin now, but most of his adult life, he lived in the Pittsburgh area, and he was a huge Steelers fan. So we talk a lot of Steelers football. He still thinks Russell Wilson is going to be the starter there in Pittsburgh this coming week one. He does. Now he's about 50-60% confident, he said. But he also
reading last year's magazines.
He also
the
said,
delay in his news sources.
Right, yeah. He also said that he would not be surprised if the Steelers say F it, and we're going with Mason Rudolph as our starter in week one. Now, I just want to run this by you, Ferrell. Mason Rudolph, if he is the starter in week one for Pittsburgh, that means he is throwing the ball to George Pickens, a guy they invested a second-round pick in, and he is throwing the ball to DK Metcalf, a guy they gave up a second-round pick for, as well as $150 million. Nothing shocks me in this league anymore. This would be pretty close to shocking me. The fact that not saying he's in touch, he's just a fan, right? He's not in touch with, the team or anything like that. But Mason Rudolph signed a 2-year, $8 million contract. He started 13 games for the Steelers in 2023. And granted, he got the ball to Pickens, and he did go 8-4-1, but a lot of that was the running game and defense. 28 touchdowns, 20 picks in 29 games with the Steelers. Drop back success rate last year, he was 13th out of 40 qualifiers in the NFL. I guess I would be really surprised if Mason Rudolph was the starting quarterback for the Steelers week one. So maybe this is just because we don't have a ton of stuff that's changing as we speak right now, but I felt like we should bring this up. George Pickens, wide receiver 34 right now in FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament. DK Metcalf, wide receiver 25 in the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament. If Mason Rudolph's a quarterback, I don't want to touch those guys at that point. Talk me off the ledge here. Tell me that those guys are going to pay off at that. Metcalf at 25 and Pickens at 30.
I think you're going to start looking at those players and you're going to buy them on the down market until we see Mason Rudolph play. Hey, let me ask you something. What was Justin Fields' record last year before he got replaced in the lineup?
I know it was good.
He was
undefeated for a while.
Yeah, and so it does not surprise me any move that they make there. And, Mason Rudolph will buckle that chin strap, from experience. I know he'll tighten up that chin strap and he'll get out there and play, man. And he's a gritty quarterback. Sometimes I just say, well, maybe he's a 3,600-yard passing quarterback. Maybe he could get up to $4,000. Where you've got a problem is you've got Metcalf and Pickens and only one ball flying off the hands of Mason Rudolph. You've also got a tight end there. It's
and I'll also say this too. I think a running back that will have day 2 draft capital as well. That's probably going to have some pass catching chops.
Yeah. So you look at a lot of things and just say, look, that's something I'm going to run from. But that's where, if you believe in those players now, you've got nothing better. You'll have nothing but better news forthcoming.
Cousins feels like a good fit, says Joe King. We will see. Ferrell,
what's Joe King out there? Look at
it. Exactly, yeah. What are the chances, in your opinion, that Cousins starts the year in Atlanta?
I don't know.
I
have no opinion and I have no feel for that situation.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I just really don't. That team is full of surprises you recognize what they did in the draft. When the general manager can surprise the owner in the first round, then you're truly watching a real life depiction of the movie Draft Day. So there's high drama there, and I would rather be an observer than a prognosticator.
I think you're right, and I think that's what we need, because Cousins really is not affecting us for fantasy right now as far as drafting players. Well, that's one of the few things we can do where we can say, well, we'll wait and see.
The guys in Atlanta will do worse than they should have.
Right? Really?
Well, it's what happens every year. No one that drafts Falcons players is happy with the production.
Yeah, that's true.
Am I right about that? You're not happy with the tight end. The running back could have done more. Drake London is he's got numbers worse than Pittman, even though people love him. So it just the beat goes on.
The beat goes on. Let's talk about more on the quarterback beat here. Cam Ward, apparently. If he does go with the Titans with the first pick of the draft, Jeremy Fowler says they'd be pretty comfortable with that. The team's interviews with Cam Ward have gone well. And apparently at the moment, these things could change. Fowler's saying there's momentum for the Titans to now stick with that number 1 pick and not trade it for, a treasure trove of picks or whatever. Apparently Ward has done a good job of explaining the mistakes he made in college on the football field at Miami, and the erratic play. Well, I should say the sometimes erratic play of Cam Ward is fixable, according to Tennessee, which is good. Now, Jeremy Fowler reported on ESPN last month that Shadir Sanders was the best fit for the Titans offense, which would make it seem like, hey, Tennessee can trade down, still get their guy. Now it seems like they are more inclined to get Cam Ward. The question that we have to answer, Ferrell, is not necessarily what are we doing with Cam Ward? What are we doing with Sanders? It's what are we doing with these Titans pass catchers, not knowing who the quarterback is going to be, but knowing it could be a pretty enticing guy, including the number 1 overall pick. If we look at Tennessee, Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 41, Chiga Conko has actually fallen tight end 27 right now. Your thoughts on the normally moribund Tennessee passing offense? Are they going underdrafted now with this Cam Ward news? Should we be trying to mix in some of these people on our best ball teams?
No, I'm running from this team. My favorite receiver in Tennessee, they shipped him out to the Miami Dolphins. You will, for best ball, you can look at these players and take your pot shots. I don't want to try to figure out on a week-to-week basis how to play these players. And for that reason, I'm going to move on. And it's I don't think we're ever going to get the production out of the tight end we want. And Ridley sure can flash some skill set.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of problems that they had last year have to be blamed on the quarterback. He changed quarterback coaches to ill effect, it's a tough thing, man. I don't. So this is the second team I'm running from. Thankfully, it's a big league, Balky. Thankfully.
So yeah, exactly. So no Browns for you, no Titans for you either.
Not at this point. No. Well, the running back.
Oh yeah, okay. Are we talking Pollard or Spears? Pollard. All right. The Bill signing of a wide receiver, which I don't quite frankly, I don't think we talked about this at all last week. So let's talk about it today. 3 years, $36 million is given to Joshua Palmer, negotiated by Joshua Palmer and his team with the Buffalo Bills. And he moves from Los Angeles to Orchard Park, catching passes from Josh Allen. $18 million in guaranteed money. Mac Hollins has left the Bills, so Palmer obviously would be the guy that would step in there. The cleat bill will go up for Buffalo this year as well, since Mac Hollins was always barefoot. Second most snaps on the outside of any Bills receiver last season did Hollins have, and playing on a one-year deal. Palmer, 2 years ago, 72 catches, 769 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 2023 was not good because of a knee injury. But Palmer last year, 15 games active, and now he gets Joe Brady as his OC. And he gets Josh Allen as his QB. I look right now at the Never Too Early Best Ball ADP. Ferrell, wide receiver 78 in the 18th round. I mean, look, I get it that Buffalo is not exactly the treasure trove of passing nirvana, but wide receiver 78 for Josh Palmer, you better believe I'm taking advantage of that just to see what happens. In your opinion, what is going to happen with Palmer this year in Buffalo?
You're going to get that 72, 700, and maybe a couple more touchdowns. And you're going to be happy about it. And you're going to say, and that's better than an 18th round draft pick. And, Shakir and the tight end here are the targets. The quarterback is getting better at getting the ball out of his hand and making early decisions. Palmer, I'm always been a big fan. But again, he seems to – he leaves the Chargers where there was a variety of options for a quarterback that knows how to play the position. And now he goes to another team in the same situation that can actually beat you with his feet and has a tremendous player at tight end. So for fantasy purposes, I don't ever think that Josh Palmer will get much higher than the 11th and 12th round. But, man, he's a bargain now. And, if I had been drafting as early this year as I was last year, and before Palmer even had a team, I would have been drafted because I know somebody was going to reward him. I hope his best football is in front of him. I used to think his best football, I used to know it in my heart, was in front of him. I don't know now, but 18th round is that's good enough risk for me.
Yeah, totally. Now I'll tell you what. There's going to be an opportunity for a lot of players to decide between Joshua Palmer and the new Green Bay Packers wide receiver, Mecole Hardman, at that point. It's a 1-year deal for the Packers, according to Jeremy Fowler. 6 years Hardman has been in the league. Do you remember back when he was drafted in the second round by the Chiefs after there was the scuttlebutt that Tyreek Hill may never play in the NFL again? It happened right before the NFL draft. He has mostly been a return guy. He has been a specialist as far as wide receiver goes. Went to the Jets for 5 games in 2023, traded back to the Chiefs after 5 games. I am of the belief that, and I know there's plenty of Packers fans that are disappointed with this Hardman signing. But I would just reassure them to tell them that I believe he was traded or he was signed as being a punt returner, potentially a kick returner, and to add depth to that receiver room. This is not a big investment. This is not a huge financial capital dedication for the Packers here in Hardman. I was talking today with Peter Bukowski, who covers the Packers for Locked On Packers and The Leap, great newsletter, theleap.football, if you're a Packers fan. And he was of the opinion that Hardman's biggest benefit is going to be how he makes guys like Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, when he's on the field, Dontavian Wicks, and Romeo Doubs better, because he does the dirty work. He compared Mecole Hardman's role on the Packers in 2025 to what Tyler Ervin's was in 2023, running these jet sweeps, doing these sort of like gadgety plays, and making everybody understand that when you play the Packers offense, you have to account for all 11 guys on the field. You want to take Hardman late, I'm not going to fault you. That's fine. I have no interest in this guy for fantasy purposes, Ferrell. I see nothing here that makes me believe, yeah, Hardman's worth it, even in a best ball league for those spike weeks. I just don't see many spike weeks for Hardman in Green Bay.
He's a best ball player. I don't see it either, but he is, well, the good term, he's just a professional football player. And that adds value to a team with a youthful core, a young quarterback that's trying to improve. So I agree with your friend's assessment of it. But there is the potential. When you have Hardman on your depth chart and you got guys banged up, you put Hardman on the field, there's a chance that you don't fall off. So let's take a look at our quarterback, Mr. Love. And let's say if you've got this quarterback, this is a good addition for Love. Because he's looking – it seems like week to week and within the game settings, many times he loses his core of which receivers. Doesn't lose all of them, of course, but loses the way that they might have prepped for the game that week, because a lot of his guys are leaving the games with injuries. Is that fair?
I would say it's fair. I again, I don't have like a super strong like take on that aspect of it. But yeah, you definitely could be right. Ferrell, we have not talked a ton of rookies on this show, but I do want to bring this up regarding Ted McMillan, because of all the rookies we've discussed, majority have been running backs. We have not talked a lot about Teteroa McMillan out of Arizona. He was in the news Monday, because he ran a 4.48 40 at his pro day. This is a guy that I have seen mocked by a lot of pundits out there in the top 10. Although recently I've seen him slip to, post 15, post 20 in the first round. He's 6'4", 220. A lot of comparisons to Drake London. He's not going to be a guy that takes the top off the defense, but 4.48 is fine for his size. What are your thoughts on McMillan, not only as a player in this league, but what he can offer essentially whatever team drafts him in the first round, we think, what he offers them his rookie year as well?
I think he immediately moves into a potential number one receiver, and I don't think you draft him if you've got a true number one. Mm-hmm. And I think he'll, like all rookies, and we say this all the time, but we could, depending on the team, we could definitely mean it here. He's going to play better in the second half of the season, which is the thing that I love to watch. It gets me ready for the next year. If you're playing strong in the second half of the season, you've got something going with your people, your quarterback, your coach. You can't wait to get back on the football field. I think this guy's a very, very successful first year. You cannot coach the size that he has, and 4.48 at that size, especially if he plays faster than his time speed. Mm-hmm. I think he does.
I think he does too.
Hands, just everything that you would want in a receiver. So now let's match him up with someone that can deliver him the ball in a catchable space. We got something going.
Michael Kinzel's hoping that he goes to New England with Drake May delivering him the ball, and we'll see what happens there. But I'd like that.
Drake May is a junior Josh Allen, though. I would like to see him go to a Justin Herbert. I'd like to see him go, I'd like to see him go to. I'd like to see him go to a traditional quarterback that goes through the reads. First of all, if he goes to New England, there's a variety of wide receivers in that room there that'll be fighting for time. I want him to go somewhere where he's surrounded by good players and step on the field, much like Worthy did at Kansas City. You know, the reason the Worthy's speed, that he was able to beat people with speed, is that the defenders have so many things to worry about when they're playing Kansas City and Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I'd like to see this kid go to a very good team.
What about the Texas teams? What if he went to Houston? Would that be a good spot?
The quarterback needs a break like that. So
Okay.
Yes, that would make sense to me. They would draft him for the purpose of saving their quarterback's career because they don't want another year like they had last year.
And then what about playing opposite CeeDee Lamb in Dallas?
Well, that's a dream scenario for everyone, especially Dak. So
And Jerry Jones for sure.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's talk about the big news out of Cincinnati this week.
Oh yeah,
4 years, $161 million to Jamar Chase. He is now the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. This according to Jordan Schultz from Fox Sports. $112 million in guaranteed money. God, must be nice. He is now under contract with Cincinnati through the 2029 season. But the Bengals weren't done. They signed T. Higgins to a 4-year deal as well. So they will have Higgins, they will have Chase, and they'll have some guy named Joe Burrow throwing the football to him. 127 catches, 1,700 yards, 17 touchdowns for Chase last year. He just, Ferrell, turned 25 years old less than 3 weeks ago. And certainly you love Chase, you love Higgins, you love Burrow. This was as Michael Scott from The Office would say, a win-win-win scenario. What's not to like about the Bengals offense? Like, I think the biggest thing that worries me here in 2025 is Chase Brown, just because I don't know what the Bengals are going to do in the draft. Now, I know they brought back P. Ryan, which maybe that makes it seem like, okay, Cincinnati's going to hit up defense on day one and day two. Maybe they take a running back on day three, and it's not a huge hit to Chase Brown. But mother of God, this is a juggernaut here. You don't watch this show to say, hey, should I take Chase at the 101? Yeah, if you want to do that, more power to you. I'd probably do the same thing. But now Higgins, Ferrell, if we look at him, there is no nebulous situation going on with him anymore. He's going to be in Cincinnati. He is wide receiver 15 at the 307 right now. How do you feel about Higgins' ADP at the moment? Because I don't think it's going anywhere. I think he's going to be solidified there.
No. Draft them aggressively and as often as you can. Stack them up and go for a bingo bonanza. You said it right, Balky. Win, win, win. It's funny how you can channel a Michael Scott quote and be so on, because what I want to take a moment to congratulate, and we're not the closest of friends, we're acquaintances, but there's been a long time agent in the business. He first worked for an agency before hanging out his own shingle as Rocky Arsenault. And what you might know, what makes your win-win-win great is because there's three people involved in this, and they're all intertwined. Rocky represents Jamar Chase, and he also represents T. Higgins. And his total independent agent, his total players in the league, 4 players that he represents. And he does a great job, obviously, and probably kicking and screaming were the Cincinnati Bengals as he pulled them into modern-day football and got the guarantees and the numbers that these 2 players deserve. And they are grateful for Rocky, and you know, I think the whole agent community should be grateful for the job that he has done. And I know the Bengal fans are, because I imagine at the combine, if you had asked him, can you get both these players signed? The answer is no. But that changed after the combine, the structure of it. And that's why free agency can last long to get these things worked out. The Bengals now must find some affordable defensive players that step up. They must rely on their scouting to fill in holes, college scouting. But, you know, this team doubled down on 2 of the finest receivers in the game. They're going to throw them the ball. You should aggressively try to get both these players on your team and then get Burrow on your team and say, I've done a job.
I think the Bengals fans are probably clamoring for Rocky Arsenault to now represent Trey Hendrickson to get the Bengals a deal with him as well. Will he pull off the Triple Crown? I don't know if that would be likely, but I know that's what a lot of Cincinnati fans.
Cincinnati been good to Rocky.
Yeah. The Minnesota Vikings were good to Aaron Jones last year. They were good to him again this year. They've extended him 2 more years. But you know what else they did, Ferrell, this week? They hooked up with their conference rival, San Francisco 49ers, to acquire Jordan Mason, the running back, who is now going to be the 1B, maybe, definitely the 2 at worst, the 1B, according to Adam Schefter, for the backfield for Vikings. Minnesota gets Jordan Mason and the number 187 pick in this year's draft. The Niners get pick 160 and a 6th rounder next year. After they get him, they sign him to a 2-year deal, $7 million guaranteed, a max value of $12 million. Now, he's going to be 26 at the start of next season. Obviously, the tread, there's plenty of tread on the tires there with Mason. And you think about how good he was when McCaffrey was hurt. He was playing all 3 downs, and he gets 789 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns, 11 catches for 91 yards in 12 games this past season. The thing that we have to look at here, I think, and we'll talk about the Niners in a second. The thing we have to look at here, at least initially, is, are we drafting Aaron Jones too high? Is Aaron Jones now suddenly a guy that we need to let somebody else take, knowing that he is now being drafted as running back 27 at the 703? That is Caleb Johnson, Tony Pollard territory. I think that's the first question we have to answer. How much does Jordan Mason, in your opinion, eat into Aaron Jones's touches, knowing Aaron Jones's age and knowing that he was used pretty hard last year by the Vikings?
I think what we're going to deal with is what we experienced with the guys from Pittsburgh last year. Didn't we start with them basically going side by side early on?
Yeah.
And then one of them separated and went higher, which it might have been Warren, if I remember correctly, but you probably remember more than I do. So Jones stays where he is. The message here to me is we're going to run the football in Minnesota. And we're gonna establish that run. We're gonna try to go that way with it. That's what I take away from this.
Yeah, I think that and I'm just looking it up right now. It was Najee Harris who actually moved up a little bit past Jaylen Warren last year. It ended up being it wasn't a ton. It looks like, trying to find it here, Najee Harris went off and in the mid 7th round last year, and then Jaylen Warren ended up settling into the end of the 8th, so about a round and a half difference.
And our Tennessee running backs, didn't they kind of do that last year as well?
Yeah. Pollard ended up as an early 8th round pick, and then Spears ended up as an early 9th round pick.
That's the drafting reality. But I think the listeners, Balky, should, on this March Madness Wednesday, should link in to listening and following your advice when it comes to young rookie running backs, because you were beyond correct about Bucky Irvin last year. And the people came on the show, and few of them joined you in your excitement. Some of them, begrudgingly did a little bit more than, give you a little shoulder shake. But all in all, you were you were the leader in this player. You identified a player that would quickly become the next Jamar Gibbs and have that look to him on the field. And, that's what we want. And everybody knows that Ashton Genty is a great running back. But, whoever else you talk about as being a young running back, the fantasy listeners should pay attention.
I think, well, number one, I was not as effusive in my praise of Irving as some of our guests were. In fact, some of our guests, I think, turned me on to him a little bit, saying like, "Hey, you should be drafting more of this guy." And
that's because you're a good listener.
Well, yeah, but at the end of the season, I wish I would add more. And I had a decent amount, but I wish I would add more. Sure. I think the other thing that's important, and I'll get to the Niners in a second. This does not necessarily preclude the Vikings from taking a running back in a very deep running back draft. However, the Vikings backfield to me is one of the more quote unquote solidified ones. There's a zillion that are not solidified right now. And I think San Francisco is one of them, where there's going to be a lot of people who are drafting right now that will invest in Isaac Guerrero, thinking he's going to be the number 2. I think the Niners are probably going to be investing in a running back that could be the heir apparent to McCaffrey, or at least be the number 2 running back this year over Isaac Guerrero, who is no stranger to the trainer's table. So my thought here with the Niners, it's McCaffrey, but then after that, I think the number 2 guy is just not on their roster yet.
Can we take a quick look at Guerrero's numbers last year?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because one of the things that impressed me about this player that I saw in the pro game that I did not see here at University of Louisville might have been a product of the play calling, might have been a product of the offensive line here in college, but I really loved his cutback ability, and when he got to the edge, he had another gear, and I think that the 49ers scouted him very appropriately, and have a player there. That's why they could let Mason go. They've got him under a rookie contract, and so I don't disagree with you that they could go in the draft with another running back, but I think you might be sliding Guerrero a little bit.
Guerrero was a guy who transferred to the University of Louisville after playing behind now New York Jets running back Braylon Allen for the University of Wisconsin Badgers.
Everybody wants to come to Kentucky, especially guys up in Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's true. I make the pilgrimage every year. Guerrero, 15 carries, 78 yards, and 2 touchdowns, including 2 catches for 50 yards in a game against the Bears this past year. He also had 85 yards rushing and a touchdown, 4 catches in the Cowboys game in late October. 99 yards rushing against the Seahawks in mid-October. Mm-hmm. Those were the standout games. Failed to top 60 yards in every other game. Obviously was playing behind McCaffrey, playing behind Mason for a good chunk of these. He ends the season with 420 yards. He catches 15 balls for 150 yards, gets into the end zone 4 times in 2024.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's enough for me. I'm sold.
Okay. The Seahawks were sold on a new receiver named Cooper Kupp. Kupp has signed with the Seahawks 3 years, $45 million, according to Adam Schefter. This happened basically right before we went on the air last Friday, but we didn't get a chance to talk about it. Again, this comes out to being $15 million a year. He grew up in Yakima, Washington, did Kupp, attended Eastern Washington University. Kupp wanted to stay on the West Coast. He gets his wish as he stays or he goes to Seattle to play with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Now, both these players play in the slot a lot. Ryan Grubb is no longer the coordinator for Mike McDonald's team in Seattle, as McDonald reportedly believed there was too much passing going on in that Seahawks offense last year. Now, Metcalf is gone, which opens the door for Kupp. Tyler Lockett has been released. That's going to increase some a decent amount of targets for the number 2 receiver in that offense. Last year for Kupp, in 12 games, 67 catches, 710 yards, and 6 touchdowns, which to me passes the test of like, okay, you look good enough in 12 games playing behind Puka Nacua. So I would think that you could continue that going in Seattle. However, Ferrell, Matthew Stafford is out, Sam Darnold is in. And Smith and Jigba is on a similar trajectory as Puka Nacua right now. And Kupp, as far as the eye test goes last season, he didn't look great. And he looked old. And he looked, I'm not going to say the W word, but he definitely looked like he had his fill of NFL football playing at a premier level. Not sure how to think about Kupp this year. Not sure how to think about the Seahawks offense now that Kupp has joined the fray next to Jackson Smith and Jigba. Right now, I'm trying to find my ADP on Cooper Kupp right now. Wide receiver 46 at the 9-12. Most of those drafts taking place after the signing. Is that a good way to spend a 9th-round pick this year on Cooper Kupp?
He'll be a 5th-round draft pick by the time we make it to Paris and Las Vegas.
Unbelievable. And so this is not just you saying – I believe in Cooper Kupp. This is you saying the FFPC players.
Oh, yeah.
They're all going to believe in Cooper Kupp and Seattle.
You know, a late career change of scenery going home is always a boost. You mean the contract? Look, let's go back now to a concept of following the money.
Mm-hmm.
They have intention for this guy. And I think the Rams in their situation are dealing with two ailing receivers, so they said, let's get rid of the oldest one, and let's bring in a guy that averages over 17 fantasy points a game for his entire career. So that's what's happening down there. So Cooper Kupp becomes expendable. He's always sort of been on a prove it situation. So he'll go up there to Seattle and prove it. And when he proved it at Los Angeles the first time, the guys that had rostered him, they won championships in fantasy football. And they've got an opportunity to do it again. I just got to get busy and get drafting. I've had a full schedule. And they're giving players like Cooper Kupp away in the 9th round. Start signing up for that gorilla, everyone.
That would be a smart idea. What does this do for Jackson Smith and Jigba's your belief in him as wide receiver 12 at the 302 right now? As high as you are on Kupp, does that mean you should be looking elsewhere than JSN at the 2-3 turn?
We're going to move him down because there's safely picks at 3-2. There's nothing wrong with the player, but now you don't want to spend the guy who's going in front, who's the two receivers in front, who's the two receivers behind.
Of Smith and Jigba, right?
Yeah, now with Darren Armani, the fantasy mojo, which I will remind you, everyone should have a subscription to this service.
AJ Brown, Drake London, Ladd McConkey. Those are the three receivers that are going immediately in front of Smith and Jigba as high as the 207. And then right after Smith and Jigba goes Tyreek Hill. And then you're seeing Garrett Wilson, T. Higgins right after that. So that's Smith and Jigba's in the middle of those six guys.
I want Wilson and Higgins before I want Smith and Jigba. Not necessarily Higgins. Do you agree with me, or am I?
I don't know. Like, the thing that scares me about Wilson is everywhere Fields has been, whether it was Chicago or Pittsburgh and now New York, it seems like the running game has been a pretty big deal. And I worry about Wilson not getting the volume that Smith and Jigba would get this year. I'm fine with Higgins over Smith and Jigba. But I don't know about Wilson. Wilson scares me a little bit.
If we're going to draft receivers early that have to get 10 targets a game to be successful, then we probably shouldn't be drafting those receivers. We probably should double down at tight end because they're going to get the targets. Hey, how many targets you think Bowers will get from Geno Smith again?
Well, okay.
Captain Insano might know who Bowers is.
Now he does. He's
getting a lot of mileage out of that, by the way.
Captain Insano, or the Bowers thing. Not knowing
who
Bowers was.
He barely knew who McConkey was and had never heard of Bowers. Yeah.
Brock Bowers, you want to take a guess at how many targets he saw last year, Ferrell?
Let's go 160.
It's an excellent guess. Excellent guess. 145 is a better Price is Right guess. 153. And he caught 112 of them last year. Now he gets Geno Smith. I don't, it'll be interesting to see what they do at running back and receiver in the draft.
They've already got the running back situation taken care of.
They do not. They absolutely
they did. They acquired Mostert.
No, it's not.
Start Mostert. Mostert.
Yeah.
I'm not living in 3 years ago, Balky, but I was enjoying that acquisition.
Mostert will probably have like 2 or 3 really good games.
And how old is Mostert now?
32, I want to say.
But he's like a Ferrari. He still goes fast. It's just.
But he's always in the shop, just like a Ferrari.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, the training staff with the Raiders will win out. And, Bucky, everybody's a little looser in Las Vegas. He'll be all right.
Raheem Mostert turns 33 in a couple of weeks.
Wow. It's just to me, he's ageless.
You
want to talk about when he was with the Niners and what they did to the Packers, what he did?
No, it was awful. And the worst part about it was, Ferrell, is I had Mostert on some teams that year, but the season was done. It was the playoffs, and Mostert's running roughshod, and I have him, but I don't have him on any, like my fantasy year is done. I don't have him on any playoff squads. So it was a double gut punch seeing him and Kaepernick just go crazy. Okay, let's do this. Where was I going here with? Oh, I had an email. I wanted to read.
Somebody emailed us.
That went, yes, it went part and parcel with our Seattle Seahawks conversation, which Dynasty Dustin hanging out, watching us tonight on YouTube. Lad McConkey, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, those are his wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 in his current big gorilla draft that's going on right now. Sam Darnold is the subject of Scott and Escondido's California's email. Is Darnold in for a rude awakening in Seattle? Thanks so much. That is Scott in Escondido, California. I think I can't remember if I was bringing this up with you last week, Ferrell, but he moves on from Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison to Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Cooper Kupp. It is different. And if Seattle really does not want to throw as much as they did last year, it's going to be a lot of Kenneth Walker. It's going to be a lot of Zach Charbonnet. I don't know if I'm on board with Sam Darnold coming in with 80% of what he did last year in Minnesota. I have my doubts.
I have my doubts too, Buck. I really do. That's another the dovetails into Jackson Smith and Jigba. So I don't know what the number is with quarterbacks that we're going to be happy with in fantasy football, but I think we better start identifying the number that says one receiver will do well and the tight end might do well, but the other receiver will fail. The other, and that's why I'm so high on those Bengals.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have a tight end, that's going to run away with anything. And we know those two receivers aren't going to fail. And we know that quarterback will probably be at 4,000 yards by game 12. So, why handcuff yourself with a quarterback that is not going to be able to reach those numbers? And, now you can begin to think about Baker Mayfield reaching those numbers.
Yeah. Totally.
We talk about a lot of quarterbacks on this show, but there's really only 12 that matter. And so why are you going to get one that's got an uphill fight and an unproven situation?
Yeah, I think the only way you would is if you're playing in best ball and you want to grab a third one. Other than that, Darnold is just not a player I want to be interested in.
Balky, my head's already in September, man. You're already in
redraft.
I'm already there at
managed
the
league.
FFPC. I'm talking to Chris. I'm getting ready to sit down. Guys are bringing me their drink tickets. Fantastic.
Ferrell, last email I have today for this show is Paul in Pittsburgh.
No.
Dear Balky and Ferrell, is the tush push really going to get banned? Does this mean even more great things for Saquon Barkley? That is Paul in Pittsburgh. So number one, we found out today that the Packers have formally proposed a rule change that would ban the tush push. No surprise, they were the ones that didn't want to see this happen. The Packers, who, by the way, until the playoffs, had a lot of success stopping the tush push. In fact, I think they were one of the most successful teams in the NFL stopping it up until their playoff matchup against the Eagles this past year. I don't think this is in any danger of being passed. And even if it was, Jalen Hurts is still going to get his quarterback sneaks. Yeah. And Saquon Barkley, with the tush push last year, had an MVP-esque season. So this will not change the way I think about Hurts or the way I think about Barkley here going forward. If I want to be down on Barkley, there's other reasons to be down on Barkley this year. His ADP, his age, his usage. I don't even know if I'm down on any of those things, but I think those would be better reasons to be down on Barkley than worried about a tush push hurting his fantasy.
Oh, you say the same thing about Mostert. They'll both be fine. Hey,
the Raiders are going to take a running back. Like, they could get Genty, Ferrell. Yeah. Or they'll take Henderson or something in round 2. And then Mostert is just like
I'm just thrilled they get Genty. I'm just thrilled.
That'd be exciting. Only 6 weeks away, a little bit less than 6 weeks away, and we'll find out who they take with that number 6 overall.
Man, those pro days are going off at 5 and 6 a clip. 5 or 6 every day. It's they're coming here to Louisville on the 25th. It's a good time.
It is a good time. I want to encourage everybody to check out kffsc.com,
Please.
kffsc.com. You can sign up right now for a ton of stuff. You can join me and some of the other luminaries right now that are playing in KFFSC, a lot of FFPC players as well. I'm currently in a $39 best ball and I thought I joined another best ball there too. Yeah, the big payback play-in.
You can only join once, Balky, but that's most appreciated.
Though, yes, yeah. So you can check those out if you want to get some best ball action. But don't forget, I mean, if you want to go out and play KFFSC, the live spots are up for the auction in Louisville. The live spots are up for Louisville in the big payback, the main events. I mean, everything is up available right now. So get out there, join, start planning your schedule. Bill Hollywood, as we said earlier. KFFSC.com is where to go for that. Ferrell, I will talk with you again in 9 days. Next Friday, we'll have another good show. This was a lot of fun tonight, man. Thanks for hanging out.
It did, and I missed our guests. I think we should get, Balky, some real things that we should aim for this year.
Yeah.
We should have a Generation X guest. We've never had that young guest. We should have more ladies. We should have Dynasty D come on the show.
And I'll be down for that, yeah.
I'll tell him how he, while he can't play online from Pennsylvania, once he crosses that state line into the bluegrass, he's good to go.
Yeah, then you'll be good to go. We are good to go with you, Ferrell, as always, at jferrellelliott on the X, at KFFSC official on the X. Brother, have a good rest of your week. We'll talk with you again next week.
Thank you, Balky.
You got it. That's Ferrell Elliott, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. I want to thank him, the FFPC, Rob, Bryce, and of course, each and every one of you for hanging out with us tonight or streaming, downloading, watching later. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour returns next Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. I don't believe I have I got some feelers out for a guest, so we'll see what happens next Friday. But next Friday, we'll have a guest again. 10 o'clock Eastern Time is when our next show will be. Tomorrow night, if you're looking for a break from the brackets, a break from hoops, I'm doing my show on the Better Sports Network tomorrow, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show. Player profilers and the fantasy football advice site, Brendan Booth, is going to be joining me tonight for 2 hours. I'm excited for him. If you've ever seen him in action on any of his streams, he's a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun for 2 hours tomorrow night. We'll get into some veteran stuff, but a lot of rookies we're going to get through, running backs, receivers, and tight ends for sure. The Never Too Early Best Ball and Superflex Best Ball tournaments available at myffpc.com right now. Enter today for your chance to win a $40,000 or $10,000 grand prize while you're at the FFPC's website. Dynasty Orphans available. Entry fees range anywhere from $77,000 to $5,000. A lot of those have been reduced for 2025. Pick yourself up a reduced fee dynasty team for this season. 1,800 plus leagues. Not a single one of them has ever been canceled or folded in FFPC history. And the FFPC launches its inaugural Big Gorilla Tournament, a $1 million grand prize. Draft's already off and running. People are playing in the early Rampage tournament with the Big Gorilla and taking advantage of that 7 bananas promo. We've already given away a lot of free teams thanks to that. For more information, go to myffpc.com, and that is where you can register to play as well. myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, right here, as well as the Better Sports Network. For Ferrell Elliott, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Your weekend, your early March Madness weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
I know there is basketball going on, and for any of you who are interested in fantasy football, thanks so much for hanging out tonight. Always love doing this show. It's always fun to do a full show with Ferrell. Hopefully you enjoyed it as well. May your bracket live long over the next 3 weeks or so, but rest assured, when everybody's bracket is busted, we'll still be here talking Dynasty Fantasy Football and fantasy football in general. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll talk with you again next Friday.